Or will just tell me if you can check Facebook as well, if it's okay.
Okay, Mataji, I'll check.
Okay. Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyapadi Pastratyara Shatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vastutyara Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Hari Bol Hari Bol Gora Hari Bol Nita Gora Hari Bol Hari Bol Nita Gora Hari Bol Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Shri Gaura Hari Ki Jai Shri Vaishnava Thakur Ki Jai Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Gaura Premi Devi Hari Hari Bol. So Hare Krishna everyone. Thank you for joining us for this second part of our 28th chapter of the Teachings of Lord Caitanya. We've been discussing this chapter. We started actually 2 weeks ago, but we had a break last week because of Shri Ram Navami. So we're going to recap so that we can all recall what we discussed then. So we'll start with our prayers. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gnana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshudarine. So I thank you all for the opportunity to try and serve by presenting this overview of the Teachings of Lord Caitanya, which we said we're on the 28th chapter of. The Teachings of Lord Caitanya is a wonderful book by Srila Prabhupada, and it's based on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is the authorized biography of Lord Caitanya, written by Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. So I pray for all your blessings to do justice to this class, so that we can better have an understanding of the teachings of the Lord and his pastimes. So this 28th chapter is called Relationship with the Supreme. It is discussions, or the continuation of discussions between Lord Caitanya and his very dear associate named Ramananda Rai. So we'll also chant the invocation prayer before we start with these discussions. It's verse 18 of the first chapter of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. And the translation is: Glory to Shri Chaitanya and Nityananda, glory to Advaita Chandra, and glory to all the devotees of Shri Gaura, Lord Chaitanya. So we said that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is now traveling in South India as part of his mission to spread the holy names of the Lord. We also said that this is an external mission of the Lord, that his internal mission is actually to experience the position of Srimati Radharani. And we quoted a very famous verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita that summarizes that mission in three parts. It says that desiring to understand the glory of Radharani's love, that's one. The wonderful qualities in him that she alone relishes through her love, that's two. And the happiness she feels when she realizes the sweetness of his love, that's the third objective. The Supreme Lord Hari, richly endowed with her emotions, appeared from the womb of Srimati Sachi Devi as the moon appeared from the ocean. Right? So the Lord's external mission is to spread the chanting of the holy names. This is what he's doing, traveling through South India. But his internal mission is that he wants to experience the glory of Radharani's love, right? How she feels, how she relishes the association with him, and the happiness that she feels. So he's actually going to now start this internal mission through the association of Ramananda Rai. So why is this necessary? Because actually Ramananda Rai is the incarnation of Srimati Radharani's very confidential associate, Vishaka Devi. Some say that Ramananda Rai is also the incarnation of Lalita Devi, but either way, both these gopis, they're very intrinsic to the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, right? So they would be very suited to the role of assisting Lord Chaitanya to experience the moods of Srimati Radharani. So Lord Chaitanya, in coming through South India, he passes the Godavari River, right? And on the banks there, in a place called at the time, today it's Rajamandri, then it was Vidyanagar. Lord Chaitanya meets Ramananda Rai, who is at the time the governor of Madras province, right, under the king of Puri, King Prataparudra. So even though externally appearing as a worldly man, a government man, and although appearing a very rich man actually, and although appearing in a Shudra family, Ramananda Rai is most elevated in spiritual matters. Right? He's somebody who has tasted the depths of bhakti. So Lord Chaitanya immediately starts to ask him in their confidential talks, tell me about the ultimate goal of life. And this is where we had started these discussions. So when Lord Chaitanya asked Ramananda Rai this, it was actually because Lord Chaitanya wants to now build up to that ultimate love, right, which is Srimati Radharani's love for Krishna. This is actually not possible for all souls to reach, but as close as one can get on that path, Ramananda Rai is actually going to explain to us. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, also acting as a devotee, is trying to reach the highest point, right? So he's learning this. He's learning this from Ramananda Rai. Actually, Ramananda Rai will say later on that it's actually Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu who has empowered him to speak like this, right? To teach us about these things. And so the Lord is bringing it out by asking the questions from Ramananda. So Ramananda Rai will then bring Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to the point that, yes, Srimati Radharani's love is the highest, and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would then invite Ramananda Rai to Jagannath Puri with him. So after he concludes his South India preaching tour, then the Lord would start experiencing these ecstasies, right? So it's quite nicely arranged like that. So when Lord Chaitanya asked Ramananda Rai what's the ultimate goal, right, of life for the human being, what's the greatest duty, what we're meant to be doing, Ramananda Rai begins with that which is most basic, right? That one should work hard, one should work honestly, and then with whatever one gains from that work, right, whatever is given to us by the higher power that is impelled by our working to give us results, right? Whatever that higher power may be, whether one may believe in God or believe in the universe. But when one gets honestly in that way, then one gives some results, some kind of maybe charity, not necessarily to that higher power, but one does some good in exchange, and one enjoys life in this way. So when we hear that, we think that, okay, this is kind of what most of the world thinks is a good life, right? To live, work hard, live honestly, give back, enjoy life effectively, in a way that's distant from that higher power, right? One doesn't generally, in the material world, relate to a higher power on a personal level every day or every month, even every week, right? Even if one does one's duty by going to the religious institute once a week, it's sort of more in a ritualistic fashion. There's no cultivation of a relationship there with that higher power. So this is again what is thought of as the highest. But when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu hears of this, he rejects it. He rejects it as any kind of ultimate goal of life, right? For many reasons, we said. In particular, it means that one actually isn't getting to know God at all, which is the basis of spiritual life, right? To connect with this this ultimate spiritual reality, and then to attain it, right? And this ultimate spiritual reality is not impersonal. But if we engage in life in the way that Ramananda Rai has described to Lord Chaitanya, then it is that we're treating God as impersonal. We don't look for him to have a personality. We don't, in a way, care that he has a personality. All that matters is that he just gives us what we want, right, in exchange for what we're doing. We want to impel him to give us a better life. This is essentially the problem. And then we also said the problem with that is that when we don't get what we want from him, then we may reject him. We may reject the path that we're on, change to another one. So also we remember that the most important book of instruction for all people who follow religious paths is actually the Bhagavad Gita, because it gives us all the duties of a human being. And Srimad Bhagavad Gita, it concludes by saying that we must actually surrender in order to achieve the highest duty. Surrender to God, that higher power. But if we don't know about that higher power, we don't know that higher power as a person, then certainly surrender is not going to be possible. So for many, many reasons, Lord Chaitanya rejects this answer of Ramananda Rai. No, it's not the highest duty to just work hard, do good, and then eventually just enjoy life, enjoy your fruits. Right? So he tells Ramananda Rai, tell me something better. Tell me something better than this, something that is beyond this. So then Ramananda Rai quoted a very important verse from Bhagavad Gita as it is. This is 9:27, if I remember correctly. Right? Just want to double check it is 9:27. Yad karoshi, yad ashnasi, yad shohosi tadasi, yad tapasyasi konteya, tat kurushomad arpanam. Right? And the translation, as Srila Prabhupada gives it to us in our text of the Teachings of Lord Caitanya, it says, O son of Kunti, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you sacrifice, whatever you give away, and whatever austerity you undergo to achieve some goal, everything should be dedicated to my service. So we see that this is taking up from this first part that Ramananda Rai described, The second path, it's a little more specific. Right? It's saying that those things that you're going to do anyway, right? You're going to work, right? Whatever you do, whatever you eat, you're going to eat. Whatever you sacrifice, you're going to give something away. Right? Whatever you give away in charity, your sacrifices may be taken perhaps as what you do for your family or your community, but whatever you give away in charity, it's slightly different, the two. And whatever austerity we undergo, because all of us undergo some kind of austerity in life. We rise early. Um, Sometimes we may take a cold bath. We fast, right? Whatever it is that you do, right, do it as an offering directly to me, the person Krishna. Okay, so we see that's already different from what Ramananda Rai described first, where it was as if you didn't really have to know who that personality was, if there was a divine person. You just want to get them to give you what you need. And so you do your work in and so on. But here there is a specific kind of exchange going on directly to the person Krishna, where one acknowledges that this um, divine personality, the supreme personality of Godhead Krishna, is the supreme, and I'm doing everything for him, everything that I would have ordinarily done for myself. Then Srila Prabhupada says, there is a similar passage in Srimad Bhagavatam in Canto 11, Chapter 2, Text 36, which states that one should submit everything, all the results of the fruitive activity one performs, right, everything one does in a work sense, with body, speech, mind, senses, intelligence, soul, and modes of nature, right, because we're all in the modes of nature, to the personality, supreme personality of Godhead, Narayan. Right? Narayan, Krishna, they're the same person. So everything that we do, we must do for him. So this is the second path. The second path. Okay, we've already discussed the first one, the path of Mimamsa. Right? We call it Mimamsa, and this is the path now of doing everything for Krishna. So it is much higher than the Mimamsa path, the first path. So Srila Prabhupada explains, he gives a very nice example of how this works by saying that it's a little bit like how when one gives some allowance to a child and then the child uses that allowance to buy a present for the parent. It's very sweet. It's a nice exchange. And it also shows the parents that, okay, this child is learning generosity and gratitude and how to give back in thanks and so on. So it's better than the Mimamsa path where one is just expecting everything and one just relies on God as what we say, an order supplier. This is much better. And it's here considering Krishna when we get from him, right, in gratitude. So so then Krishna himself explains that that it's very important that we do this, that we get free from the bondage of work. That's actually, it's a very important point for Arjuna in particular in Bhagavad Gita, because wasn't he concerned about the reactions of work? Right? He was worried that if he works, that is, he performs his warrior duty, then he's going to cause sin, right? He's going to kill his family members. It's going to result in complete destruction of society because his family members are engaged in so many activities for the ancestors, for women, children as a protector, so on. So because of all of that concern, Krishna he tells him, if you do things for me, then you'll be free of karma. And this is the important point here. But Lord Chaitanya rejects this path also. Lord Chaitanya, however, also rejected the second statement saying, if you know of something higher than this, then state it. So now we may wonder, what's higher than this, right? Krishna himself is saying, do all these things for me. Why would Krishna give us a path that's not the highest? So how does Srila Prabhupada explain it to us? So Srila Prabhupada starts by saying that yes, what Krishna is saying here in the Bhagavad Gita, right, do everything for me, offering everything to the Supreme Lord as enjoined in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, is better than impersonally making the Lord subject to our work. It's better than the first path, the Mimamsa path. This we are clear on, right? Because we're not making the Lord subject to our work. Our work now give me. That is clear. But it's still short of surrendering to the Lord. This is what Srila Prabhupada says. It's still short of that very important factor. it means you're acknowledging that Krishna is God here. Right? You're acknowledging you've got to do something for him, but you're not doing it for him in complete surrender. You're not surrendering totally to you. And surrender is the ultimate instruction of Bhagavad Gita, because that's what Krishna concludes with, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja, surrender everything to me. So again we ask, why is Krishna then giving us a lesser path, right? The path that doesn't include surrender? So we have to take a step back and then understand that Krishna is the Supreme Father, right? We've said this many times, and he acknowledges that all his children are not exactly on the same level. They're not on the same level of spiritual understanding. They're not ready for the same things in spiritual life. They may not want the same things in spiritual life. And because of that, they may not be ready to surrender to him. Yes, it's as simple as that. And if they're not ready to take that very big step of surrender, what must Krishna do? Must he just abandon them to stay in the material world perpetually suffering? Or will he provide other paths that are suitable to their spiritual level? So the latter is what he does. And he makes many paths available. Paths that will keep people making a progressive march towards him, right? That caters to the level that they are on at that time. Okay. So those paths are varied, right? They include what Krishna describes in Bhagavad Gita, karma yoga, right? The yoga of work, sacrificing one's work for the Lord, or the fruits of one's work for the Lord. This is what Ramananda Rai is speaking of here. Then there's jnana yoga. There's renunciation in knowledge. You understand that ultimately you have to give up this world, so that's what you do. You renounce it. And you try to understand what is your real goal in life. Jnana yoga. Jnana is knowledge. There's also the path of Ashtanga yoga. Ashtanga yoga, also called by other names like Hatha yoga and so on, depending on how one is practicing this yoga, is the yoga of meditation, and where one gets mystic powers, and so it's also called mystic yoga. And eventually one can realize Krishna through his aspect of the indwelling Paramatma, the super soul in the heart. It's also one of his aspects. And then, of course, there are other paths that one may take. Krishna explains more in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that people may worship the demigods, which is an indirect way of worshipping Krishna. They may worship ancestors, they may worship ghosts and spirits even, right? This depends on their level, like we said. It depends on their level of understanding. And then when one may also take to mixed paths of devotion to Krishna, where one is engaging somewhat in things for Krishna, like what he described here. Whatever you do, do it for me. However you fast, do it for me. But one is not completely surrendered to him, right? So it's like it's a Mishra Bhakti. It's mixed with something. It's not a pure Bhakti, because there's no complete love and there's no complete surrender. And then, of course, there is the path of complete love, of surrender. That is called Bhakti. So many paths. And it's not exactly as people say that all the paths will lead to the same goal. Right? They don't actually lead to the same goal, but they're meant to lead us to Bhakti. And Bhakti leads us to the goal. Bhakti leads us to Krishna. Right? So this is why Krishna is explaining to those who are not at least able to completely surrender or engage in loving service to Krishna, or do all these things in love for Krishna, but who want to do them anyway for him, right? At whatever level they are, they want to do things for him. They want to do charity in his name, and so on. He says, okay, do that for me, right? It will at least free you from some karmic results. But for those who are advanced, right? Manushyanam sahasreshu kashidyatiti siddhaye yasnam api siddhanam kashidvyati mam tatvataha. For those who are endeavoring for perfection, right? Krishna gives another explanation a few verses down in the same 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Right? The same chapter where he told us, do this for me, give charity in my name, sacrifice for me. Then he explains how we can take this a step further for it to become bhakti. And that's the last verse of chapter 9. Very famous verse as well. Whatever you, Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mam evaishyasi yuktvaevam atmanam matparayanaha. And the translation is, engage your mind always in thinking of me. Become my devotee, offer obeisances to me and worship me. Being completely absorbed in me, surely you will come to me. So now this may sound a lot like this other verse, right? The verse that we just read. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you sacrifice, whatever you give away, whatever austerity you perform. How is this verse, the second verse that we've read now, 934? How is 934 different from this first verse, 927? 934 is different if we look at the wording where Krishna is telling us to do everything for him. And he says, being completely absorbed in me, the Sanskrit of which is Atmanam Matparayanaha, your soul, you, right? Atmanam Matparayanaha, in me. In me, Prabhupada translates it actually in the word for word, in devotion. Absorbed in complete devotion to me, doing all these things in complete devotion. We see the difference? In the previous verse 927, he didn't mention anything about devotion. He just said, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you sacrifice, whatever you give away, whatever austerity, you do it for me. And however you do it for me, whether you love me, whether you don't love me, whether you're absorbed in me, whether you're devoted to me, just do it for me. At least that's the least we can do, right? It's a level that some lucky persons may be able to reach to. But for those who do all these things, being completely absorbed in Krishna, right, being devoted to him, there's a special result there. Surely you will come to me. Right? Evaishyasi. He doesn't mention anything in 927 about what result you're going to get. But here he says, if you're completely devoted to me and you're doing all these things in complete devotion, then surely you'll come to me. Right? Surely. Right? Evaishyasi. You will come to me. So now we see the difference about why bhakti or devotion is so essential to everything that we do. We can do things for Krishna. All of us are trying, endeavoring. But without the bhakti, it's not exactly there yet. It's not exactly getting us to the ultimate goal. So, Srila Prabhupada also spoke about this a few times. He said that some of his disciples may actually be reaching the heavenly planets because they're not complete in their devotion to the Lord. Or maybe they still have some desires left. He also stated that in a posthumous letter to Jayananda Prabhu, the very wonderful devotee of Srila Prabhupada, who was instrumental in the first Rath Yatras in the Western world. So he said in that letter that if you have some desire, then you may go to the heavenly planets to experience it. And Srila Prabhupada also mentions this in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Sometimes even devotees on the path, right, we may have some curiosity what the heavenly planets are like and so on. So it means that we have to endeavor that all these little desires, hidden desires, these material attachments, we have to endeavor for these to be gone completely. Otherwise, we can't actually get to the spiritual world unless it's completely erased. It has to be completely erased. This is very important. So in order to come to Krishna, we must be fully absorbed in him. So this is why Srila Prabhupada then explains the problem with this path of 927, right? When you just do things for Krishna, but you're not fully absorbed in him. You haven't fully surrendered to him. A worker's identification with material existence cannot be changed without proper guidance. Such fruitive activity will continue one's material existence, right? Working, getting the fruits, giving some to Krishna, but not complete surrender or absorption. A worker is simply instructed here to offer the results of his work to the Supreme, but there's no information given to enable one to get out of the material entanglement. That is, no information about this pure devotion, or no development of this pure devotion. Therefore, Lord Caitanya rejected this proposal. Lord Caitanya wants the ultimate. He's taking the role of a devotee. He wants advice from Ramananda Rai. You tell me the ultimate path, because he's taking the role of us. He wants us to get on that ultimate path, not these paths that may get us somewhere, but not to the ultimate goal. Because we may get to the heavenly planets and we may enjoy ourselves, but we may also get distracted from the spiritual path. We may have to come down to the material world again, and there we go on the great merry-go-round. And there's no guarantee how many lifetimes it may take us, lifetimes filled with suffering it may take us to actually get to the spiritual world. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is like, I don't want any of these intermediate paths. I want the highest. So tell me what's better than this. Okay. So after having his suggestions rejected twice, Ramananda proposed that one should forsake his occupational activities altogether and by such detachment rise to the transcendental plane. In other words, he recommended complete renunciation of worldly life. So this is very interesting, what Ramananda Rai is now saying. He's saying that, okay, we haven't surrendered completely to Krishna. We haven't developed that complete absorption. And that's because we're still attached to things of this world. Right? If we're still attached to material things, then you have to stay here too. We could say work it out of our system. And Krishna is very kind to us. We may think, well, he's letting us stay here even though we're on the devotional path. Why? But it's because Krishna, he respects our desires. And because he's within us, he knows those desires very well. And because he respects our desires and respects our independence, he's not going to interfere with that. If we still got things that we need to work out of our system, if we still got things that we want to experience in this world, like we said before, maybe this desire to go to the heavenly planets, or we want to still achieve some things in this material, he lets us get it out of our system. It's the same way we may think children that are playing. And sometimes you can't convince them to come back to have their supper, so you just let them exhaust themselves until they're so hungry and tired that they come back on their own, right? They give up the idea of playing. So sometimes that's what has to happen to us as well. We have to get it out of our system. And so Ramananda Rai, he recommends the renunciation of worldly life. This is what happens when people get frustrated with this material life. When we realize these desires are binding us to this world, it's not helping us. It's giving us so much of pain and loss. Right? We get frustrated and we give it up. Right? We renounce it. Right? It's detachment. It's complete detachment. It's not yet surrender, though. Right? It's not yet surrender. But at least it is giving up this world. Right? It's giving up work, basically, fruitive activities, anything that's going to give us results, right? And it is focusing only on the goal of liberation. This is what renunciation is. To support this proposal, he cited evidence from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 11, Text 32, wherein the Lord says, "In the scriptures I have described the ritualistic principles and the way one can become situated in devotional service by giving them up." Okay? So Krishna is saying, I've given all these kinds of ritualistic principles in the Vedas and so on, right? Those flowery words that he speaks about in the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, all these things that you can do for promotion to the heavenly planets or having a better life here. But the way we can become situated in devotional service is to give all of those up, right? To give up all the ideas we can enjoy this world. That is the highest perfection of religion. Ramananda also quoted Lord Krishna's similar statement in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, text 66. Sarvadharmang parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma suchaha. Give up all kinds of religiousness and just surrender unto me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I shall protect you from all sinful reactions, and you will have nothing to be aggrieved over. So we've spoken that, okay, this is the goal, this is surrender, but yet Lord Caitanya also rejected this third proposal from Ramananda Rai, for he wanted to demonstrate that renunciation in itself is not sufficient. Okay, so what does this mean now? Because we just said that surrender is Krishna's ultimate instruction in Bhagavad Gita. That surrender is mentioned here in 1866, Sarvadharmam Parityajya. But Lord Chaitanya is saying it's not that you renounce or that you give everything up, it's how you give it up and for what purpose. Anybody can give up everything. Everybody can go to the forest, anybody can go live in an ashram. But can we do this in devotion to Krishna, doing it for Krishna and not for ourselves, not just out of frustration with this material world, not just because we can't deal with work life anymore or family life or anything like that? And are we going to use all the time that we now have for complete devotional service? That's the kind of surrender that Krishna is speaking about. It's not for any other reason. And Lord Chaitanya is bringing this to Ramananda Rai's attention because he's bringing it to the attention of all of us as well. Right? There is surrender and there's surrender. That's the point. So there must be positive engagement, Prabhupada says. It means you must renounce this world in order to engage in devotional service to Krishna. If you're renouncing this world just to be engaged in dry speculation and all the other things that are actually just more activities of the false ego, then you're actually not free from this world. This is important for us to realize. Without positive engagement, without being engaged in devotional service, the highest perfectional stage cannot be attained. So that means that renunciation itself is just not enough to get us to that perfectional stage, the ultimate goal of life, right? To attain Krishna. Renunciation alone is not enough. It's how we renounce. So then we're going to discuss now the different kinds of renunciants there are, to show us how there are these different classes and how they don't necessarily get to devotional service. Why Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is rejecting renunciation by itself. Generally, there are two kinds of philosophers in the renounced order of life. The goal of one is nirvana, and the goal of the other is the impersonal Brahman effulgence. Okay, so nirvana basically means, excuse me, sorry about that. So nirvana basically means that we stop our existence as we know it. So even the impersonalists also want to stop their existence as they know it. But the difference with nirvana is that one doesn't even want to exist as even a particle of light afterwards in the Brahman, okay, as just the soul itself. The persons who want nirvana just don't want any kind of existence afterwards. Whereas the impersonalists, they want an existence where they give up their individuality, but then they exist in Brahman, as Brahman. Right? They think they can become one with Brahman. So we see the difference. In both cases, there is some giving up of who we are, our existence, right, our individuality. But with nirvana, it's completely giving it up, where we don't exist at all anymore. But with impersonalism, we just don't exist as individuals. We become one with the Supreme, right? One with the light. So such philosophers cannot imagine that they can reach beyond nirvana and the Brahman effulgence to the Vaikuntha planets of the spiritual sky. They have no idea there's anything else beyond this. If they get free of this world just so that they can stop their existence, nirvana, or they can become one with God and not exist in that way anymore as persons, they think that's the highest, right? We've gotten free of this world. But that, we could say, is where they've reached the 0 point, right? We could think of it as a scale from negative, 0, positive. And of course, engagement in this material world is negative. But then reaching the point where we stop engaging in material activities, we've given up material activities completely, and we renounce, that's like 0. But 0 is still not the ultimate. There's still so many numbers after 0. So devotional service is like that. It's the positive, right? Positive engagement, as Prabhupada says. So the impersonalists and those who are trying to achieve nirvana, they have come out of the negative factor at least. They're sitting on neutrality, we could say, this 0 point, but they don't know there's anything more. There's a plus beyond that, right? Because in simple renunciation, there's no conception of spiritual planets and spiritual activities, right? The plus, the devotional service. Lord Chaitanya rejected this third proposal. Ramananda Rai then cited more evidence on the Bhagavad Gita. Right? Now he's quoting chapter 18, text 54, right? Which is more evidence for why renunciation is good. Right? Those who come to the 0 point, right, who've achieved freedom from material activities and bondage, even if they haven't yet gone to spiritual activities and devotional service, still being at the 0, this equilibrium, this is very good. Right? And he's citing a verse that states that or supports that. Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati sama sarveshu bhuteshu madbhakting labhate param. And the translation of this verse is, when by cultivation of knowledge a person realizes himself to be non-different from the Supreme Absolute Truth, right, he becomes joyful and is freed from all kinds of lamentation and material desires. So let's clarify that. When we get free of material attachment at this platform, which is here called the Brahma Bhuta platform, we realize ourselves as the same quality of Krishna. The problem is when people think of themselves as the same with Krishna. right? So when Krishna says here, non-different from the Supreme, he means non-different in quality, not that we become the same as God. But at least by realizing ourselves to be of the same nature as God, we become joyful. Because we're understanding that in that quality of God, eternity, knowledge, and bliss, there isn't any of material sufferings that we've been going through. That's why one becomes joyful. Therefore, if one reaches this 0 point, this Brahma Bhuta platform, this platform that all impersonalists and those who are following the path of nirvana, which generally we take to be Buddhists, they will get joyful when they're freed of this material attachment, this material world, the material contamination, when they get past all the negatives. Right? This is now where they're experiencing great joy because they're free of material suffering. So, in particular, there's two kinds of sufferings that they're free of at this Brahma Bhuta platform. They're free of lamentation and they're free of material desires, which is also called hankering. No lamentation, no hankering. Because hankering and lamentation are two of the worst kinds of miserable conditions that the human beings are finding themselves in. Always depressed or upset over what we've lost and always anxious over what we want. So definitely somebody who is not experiencing that anymore, that person is joyful. So let's continue with this translation. At that time, he perfects his Brahman realization, right? He perfects the realization that I am of the same quality of God by seeing everyone on the same spiritual level, right? He also sees all other souls as part and parcel of Krishna and as like the quality, having the quality of Krishna. And we remember that is Samadarshinaha, Pandita Samadarshinaha, the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, seeing with equal vision. Such Brahman realization can elevate one to the transcendental stage of devotional service. This verse is clearly stating, though, that the Brahman realization level of Brahma Bhuta is not enough. It will just elevate one to the transcendental stage of devotional service. It will bring us to real devotional service. Right now, we're just in the practice of devotional service. We still need to come to this real transcendental stage of devotional service when we overcome all our material attachments, where we stop hankering, we stop lamenting, we see everyone as equal. Then we get to the level of devotional service, real devotional service. So Ramananda Rai, he basically said in the beginning, Prabhupada says that we do service for Krishna with renunciation of the fruit of work, right? That part that Krishna was telling us to do, offer everything to me, give everything, whatever you give away, do it all for me. But here he suggests that devotional service with full knowledge and spiritual realization is superior, because we said that sometimes we still have attachments. But here, if you're fully renounced and you have complete knowledge to support your renunciation, this should be better. This should be better. So he's trying to convince Lord Caitanya. Lord Caitanya, however, also rejected this proposal, because simply by renouncing material results in Brahman realization, one does not realize the spiritual world and spiritual activities. We only realize ourselves as Brahman, but we do not realize the spiritual world and spiritual activities. In order for us to realize those, we have to engage in devotional service post the Brahman realization. So after Brahman realization, we take to the transcendental stage of devotional service, which Krishna says in this Brahma Bhuta verse. Then we realize the spiritual world and the spiritual activities so that we can enter into it. You have to realize the place that you're going to if you're going to spend eternity there. And if you're going to immigrate to a country in the world, you can't just pitch up there without doing your research, without knowing the languages they speak, the food that they eat, how you're going to earn a living or exist there, what work you're going to do. In the same way, we can't just want to go to the spiritual world without knowing anything about it and without becoming of the nature of spirit so that we can exist there properly. So we have to realize ourselves and realize the Lord and the spiritual world and spiritual activities by devotional service. Although there is no material contamination when one attains the stage of Brahman realization, in that stage one is still not perfectly pure because there is no positive engagement in spiritual activity. Right? It means there's no engagement in devotional service. Someone can just become a Brahman realized person. They're very happy because they're free of all their material attachments, but they're still not yet in devotional service. They haven't, of course, perfected it either to attain the spiritual world. Because it is still on the mental plane, it is external. the pure living entity is not liberated unless he is completely engaged in spiritual activity. So sometimes we speak of liberation in terms of being free of material desires and free of the material world. We call these persons liberated souls, and it includes impersonalists because they are in a way liberated. They're just liberated from material attachments, but they are not completely liberated, or they have not achieved the perfection of liberation, right? Because they haven't been engaged in spiritual activity or devotional service. That is the ultimate liberation. As long as one is absorbed in impersonal thoughts or in thoughts of void, right? These are the common renunciants. One's entrance into an eternal blissful life of knowledge is not complete. When spiritual knowledge is not complete, one will be hindered in his attempt to cleanse the mind of all material variegatedness. Right? It means that often people fall back to the material world. It's like if you want a child to let go of a toy for a while, right? You can take it away from them, but they're gonna cry for it, right? They'll still be absorbed in thinking of it, and they'll try and get it back from you, right? But if you give them a better toy, then they're not going to be hankering for that other toy anymore. So that's the point. When we leave the activities of this world, like the impersonalists or the voidists, but we haven't been given any higher spiritual engagement, we may still go back. We may still think of those things. There's nothing in our minds now to keep us active or engaged. Right? So we may go back. But if we're always engaged in spiritual activities, there's no chance of us going back. Those activities have a higher taste, and those activities are completely absorptive, right, to the point where we don't even have the time to think about all these material things again, right? So the impersonalists, the voidists, they don't have that experience. Thus, the impersonalists are frustrated in their attempts to make the mind void by artificial meditation, right? Just trying to keep still without any spiritual engagement. It is very difficult to void the mind of all material conceptions, right? Everybody knows. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 12, text 5, it is stated that those who indulge in such impersonal meditation find it very difficult to make spiritual advancement. Right? It's very difficult. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is not looking for that difficult path. In addition, whatever state they do attain is not complete liberation, right? Because they don't take to devotional service. Therefore, Lord Chaitanya rejected it. Okay. So we are going to conclude with this point here, and we will continue with our discussions on this wonderful chapter next week. So please join us. We'll see what Ramananda Rai's fifth proposal to Lord Chaitanya is going to be, and how the Lord is going to very nicely guide us to the ultimate goal of life. So please join us. Shri Shintai Gaura Hari Ki Jai, Shri Ramananda Rai Ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Shintai Gaura Premi Devi Dasi, Hari Hari Bol. Are there any questions or comments, any points that I can try and clarify, or anything that you want to correct me on? We'll try and answer those.
Hare Krishna, dear Mataji. Thank you very much for wonderful class.
Thank you for
what I want to ask is about liberation. We speak about full liberation, but in fact, for devotees from Srimad Bhagavatam, we know that they reject any kind of liberation. Sarupya, so on. And because also if these kinds of liberation are offered by Krishna, they don't want, because they just want to remain eternal service of the Lord.
Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, this is very true, because like we said, for those who are who are just free from the material world, it's incomplete liberation. But even beyond that, we have or we could say included in that is one of the 5 types of liberation, which is merging into the Supreme, which is not enough for devotees, because that merging doesn't allow one at all to experience the joy and the sweetness, the supreme joy and the sweetness of Krishna's association and pastimes. So this merging is not even in question. But a pure devotee doesn't even want the other four kinds. There's four other kinds of liberation, where one can live on the same planet as Krishna, Salokya. We can have the same form as the Lord, Sarupya. Actually, this is Vaikuntha liberation, so it's the same form as the Lord in Vaikuntha, Narayan. One can live on the same planet as him, one can have the same form as him, one can have the same opulences as him, Samipya and Shashti. One can be an associate of him. Hope I didn't get the last two mixed up, the Sanskrit. But basically, those are the four things one can have, right? The same form, the same opulence, the same residence, and the same association with him. So all of these, though, there's nothing wrong with them per se, right? As liberation, it's liberation. It's free of this material world and attaining the spiritual world, which is what Srila Prabhupada is saying is actual liberation, where one is not just out of this material world, which is a state you can't really maintain. You'll fall back if you don't get some positive engagement. But if you get that positive engagement and you get to the Vaikuntha planets in any of these four ways, then that's ultimate liberation. But even beyond that is liberation without any desires for ourselves. Because when we get these other four types of liberations, we still may have some desire to experience the Lord's wonderful association in some way, right? To the same opulence, living in the same planet as him, and so on. We want to be liberated from this world. But someone who's purely in love with Krishna doesn't even want that. Doesn't even want to have the same opulence as him or to live with him. That person has no desire for themselves whatsoever, right? Even if that desire is liberation. So because they're free of that desire, any desire, that means their love is of the purest kind. And that purest love is the ticket into the highest planet, Goloka Vrindavan. It's the only way one can get to Goloka, because in Goloka Vrindavan, the devotees are free of absolutely every kind of desire, even the desire for the liberation, all these different kinds of liberation. So this is the love that Lord Caitanya wants us to eventually get to. This is the love that he is building Ramananda Rai up to explain to us, so that we know that there's an ultimate goal. So we may think, well, why is that necessary? Right? If we reach the same planet as Narayan, that would be a good thing, right? So we also know that even Lord Narayan, he likes to see the pastimes of Krishna. This is Srila Prabhupada actually mentions in Srimad Bhagavatam, that even Narayan has a desire, because they don't actually get to see these wonderful pastimes of Krishna in Vaikuntha. So when Lord Krishna comes to the material world, they also get to experience it. Now imagine you're there, you've attained this position as an associate of Lord Narayan, but you see these wonderful pastimes of Krishna and you think, well, I want to be there. So if you can't achieve that point from there, from the Vaikuntha planets, then you may have to come back, actually, His Grace Raghunath Bhatta Prabhu was explaining. And if you have to come back to this world, then you have to go through that devotional process in order to achieve that love, that pure love for Krishna, and get to Goloka. So rather we aspire for the highest that we can achieve. Of course, if we have this eternal relationship with Narayan, it's different. We said in the beginning, it's not bad. There's nothing bad. But we can also try and reach the highest that we can possibly reach. Right? The goal of Goloka Vrindavan and these best of pastimes of the Supreme Lord, right? The pastimes of Krishna and Vrindavan. Is that okay, Mataji?
Thank you very much, dear Mataji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dandava Pranam.
Thank you. Except my business, Hare Krishna. Is there any other comments or questions? Any other anything else we can clarify? So if there's none, we're going to sing one bhajan in glorification of so many wonderful spiritual personalities, because yesterday was their appearance day. It was the appearance day of Bhakta Hanuman. He is a very great devotee of Lord Ramachandra. It was the appearance day as well of Shamananda Pandit. He was a very extraordinary devotee who appeared in the line of the six Goswamis. He was actually part of that second generation after Lord Caitanya that distributed the works of the six Goswamis across Eastern India, Eastern and Mid-Eastern India, and he had many extraordinary pastimes. His particular area was in Orissa, so he he spread the Sankirtan movement far and wide there. And it was also the parents of Vamsivadan Thakur. So Vamsivadan Thakur, he's an associate of Lord Caitanya. He was actually junior to Lord Caitanya, he was younger than him. But he's the incarnation of Lord Krishna's flute. He's the incarnation of Lord Krishna's flute. And he stayed back when Lord Chaitanya took sannyas, and Vamsivadan Thakur took care of or rendered services to Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's wife, Srimati Vishnupriya. And therefore the deity of Lord Chaitanya, who was carved from the neem tree that Lord Chaitanya appeared under, the deity that was given to Vishnupriya to mitigate her separation from Lord Chaitanya, this deity was given to Vamsivanan Thakur to worship. So he's a very exalted personality. It is also, yesterday was also the full moon celebration of the Rasa dances of Krishna and Balaram, as well as the appearance of Sri Shamkund and Radhakund. So in order to glorify the Vaishnavas, we're going to sing O He Vaishnava Thakur. And the Lord is always most pleased when his Vaishnavas are glorified. O He Vaishnava Thakura Dayara Sagara Erase Karuna Kori. O He Vaishnava Thakura Dayara Sagara Erase Karuna Kori. Diya Padachaya Shada He Amaya Tamara Charana Dhori. Diya Padachaya Shada He Amaya Tamara Charana Dhori. Jaya Bhega Domi Jaya Dosha Shodhi Jaya Guna Deho Dashe. Jaya Bhega Domi Jaya Dosha Shodhi Jaya Guna Deho Dashe. Jaya Satsanga Deho E Amare Boshe Sangera Ashe. Jaya Satsanga Deho E Amare Boshe Sangera Ashe. Ekaki Amara Nahi Paya Bala Hari Rama Sankirtane. Ekaki Amara Nahi Paya Bala Hari Nama Sankirtane. Tumi Kripa Kori Shadabindu Diya Deho Krishna Nama Dhane. Tumi Kripa Kori Shradha Bindu Diya Deho Krishna Nama Dhane. Krishna se tomara Krishna jite param tomara shakati ache. Krishna se tomara Krishna jite param tomara shakati ache. Amito Kangala Krishna Krishna Boli Daitava Pache Pache. Amito Kangala Krishna Krishna Boli Daitava Pache Pache. Jaya Vaishnava Thakur 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 Vaishnava Thakur Jaya Vaishnava Thakur. Prabhupada 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 Jai, Prabhupada Jai Jai, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jai Jai, Prabhupada. We'll read the translation. O Venerable Vaishnav, devotee of Krishna, O Ocean of Mercy, be merciful unto your servant. Give me the shade of your lotus feet and purify me. I hold on to your lotus feet. Teach me to control my 6 passions, rectify my 6 faults. Bestow upon me the 6 qualities and offer unto me the 6 kinds of holy association. I do not find the strength to carry on alone the Sankirtan of the holy name of Hari. Please bless me by giving me just 1 drop of faith with which to attain the great treasure of the holy name of Krishna. Krishna is yours. You have the power to give him to me. I am simply your servant running behind you shouting, Krishna, Krishna. So we'll read about these attributes in the 2nd verse. The 6 passions are those pertaining to words, the mind, anger, the tongue, the stomach, and the genitals. The 6 faults are overeating, attachment to material things, inability to follow regulative principles, sense gratification, useless idle talk, and impure habits. The 6 positive qualities are enthusiasm in practicing devotional service, firm faith in devotional processes, a strong desire to attain prema bhakti, a favorable service attitude, avoidance of non-devotees, and appreciation of the company of devotees. The 6 methods of association are to go to an assembly of devotees, to invite devotees into one's home, to discuss and hear devotional topics, to take the Mahaprasad of devotees, and to offer Mahaprasad to devotees. And all these 6s, right, they're described in the first 4 verses of the Nectar of Instruction by Srila Rupa Goswami.